If you watched my first ever video, I said this.
I personally haven't played FNAF 2.
Oh, sorry, give me a sec. Well, if we're being technical, that's a lie. When I was a young kid, I ended up playing the old FNAF 2 mobile demo over and over again, but I don't really know if that counts. And due to the movie release, I ended up playing the full game from nights 1 to 6 in a voice call with a few friends of mine. I originally intended on making a gameplay highlights video, but I found it really boring to make, so I'm repurposing the footage for this video, so yeah. For the longest time before playing this game, I was under the impression that FNAF 2 was rushed, badly made, and just plain old boring. Well, let's just say after playing it, I, don't think that anymore. The game's actually pretty scary and fun for what it's worth. It's far from perfect, and I do have my gripes with it, which we'll get into later, but I definitely think much higher of it than before. And with all that said, I think it's about time we get into this. The first ever teaser dropped for FNAF 2 of a newly designed, slightly withered Freddy tipping his hat as it says Grand Reopening 2015. Ha! There's not much to really say about this teaser besides the fact people were absolutely hyped that there was going to be a second game. And at the time it was definitely interesting how Freddy looked a little different in this title, being a little chubbier, having buttons, and being more visibly beaten up than his original form. It not being entirely clear if this was the same Freddy from the first title but redesigned, or a different one entirely. Something borrowed, something new. One of the most iconic FNAF teasers there is. Showing a faceless, dirty, and beaten up Bonnie to the left, something borrowed, and a shiny, cute, and brand new looking Bonnie to the right, something new. Our first look at one of the new toy animatronics, the text referencing the phrase, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, implying that parts of the old animatronics have been borrowed to build the newer animatronic models, explaining to us why Bonnie's face was missing. Once again, the community noted the small differences between the original Bonnie's design and this one, the most glaring differences being that this version of him has buttons and no face, while the original doesn't and actually has a face. I think this is the point in which the community started to refer to the Wizards as the old animatronics to differentiate them from their FNAF 1 counterparts, but don't quote me on that. The third teaser of classic Foxy and presumably the new version of Foxy both peeking out from either sides of a curtain. A sign with the number 2 on it in the center of the frame, really hammering home this is the sequel to the original game. It's certainly interesting that FNAF 1 Foxy is used here rather than their Withered variant, but it's easily explained away by how Scott probably hadn't finished the model yet. Speaking of, well that was quick! Staring through the eyes of a Freddy head, we get a small glimpse of the office alongside Withered Foxy at the end of the corridor through a flashlight aimed at him. The top of the screen reading, "No place to run and exactly one place to hide." A lot of people interpreted this as FNAF 2 being free roam for some reason, which... The first game is literally just this, bro, and Scott Korf has never made a fully free roam game in his life. You really think he's gonna try and do something like that on Click Team's 2 GB RAM limit? And the final teaser we have to look at is... nothing? Well, almost nothing. A square labelled Cam 11 with a warning marker next to it. At first it may seem like this is all there is to see, but upon brightening the image, it reveals a look at a new antagonist, unlike any of the other animatronics we had seen at this point in time. Its body thin and lanky, attached to the ceiling by strings like a puppet as it sports a large, toothless grin. Purple tear marks running down from 2 unsettlingly realistic eye sockets. Its strange design, the warning symbol next to presumably its starting camera, and the very fact you have to brighten the image to even get a glimpse at them, is all too telling as to this thing's significance in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's grim history. Oh yeah, we should probably talk about the trailer, huh? FNAF 2's trailer, by far the most iconic FNAF game trailer there is, right next to the original FNAF 1 trailer. The scene of Withered Bonnie activating, the shots of all the other Wizards, the dramatic and intense music hinting at how panic-inducing this game is gonna be. I think it's safe to say that we were absolutely hyped. And also very confused. Moving on to the theories revolving around the trailer though, people thought the kids at the beginning of the trailer were saying might kill all if you reverse the clip, which is just absurd, that can't be right. Well, I'll be damned. And people thought Foxy was shouting freedom in his jump scare. I mean, I can kinda see it, but... damn, FNAF fans back in 2014 were wild! Upon opening the game, you don't go straight to the menu, instead staring through the eyes of FNAF 1 Freddy as Chica sits to our left and Bonnie is to our right. We'll have to look around and wonder what the hell is going on for a few moments before Freddy's vision statics up and then... we're brought to the title screen. It's very similar to the FNAF 1 menu, displaying the main 3 toy animatronics rather than just Freddy, with our foes occasionally glitching for a frame or two, metamorphosizing into their withered variants. It's nothing to write home about, I'd say, but it's only the second FNAF game to have been released, so it's not too bad. Though once we actually start the game, we see the usual newspaper that FNAF games used to begin with before fading into our office. One vent to the left and another to our right, alongside a both comically big and completely nonsensical hallway in front. More on that in a bit. Gameplay wise, you've got the camera system from the last game, I don't think I need to explain this, alongside a flashlight to use in your corridor. The one thing I don't understand though is why you can't use the flashlight on the vents and have to use these light buttons. It's not that hard to aim a flashlight, Jeremy! Besides that, there's the most iconic mechanic of this game in particular, being the mask. Used to mess with animatronic facial recognition systems and an extension of Phone Guy's BS about the animatronic seeing you as a naked endoskeleton. Fucking liar. At the time, this was a really unique idea to hide from the animatronics, actually posing as one of them to keep yourself alive. And to be fair, it still is kind of a neat concept, even by today's standards. Oh, and speaking of the Phone Guy, it's worth it to note that Phone Guy is actually alive in this title when he, you know, died in the last one. Pretty weird, right? As for the animatronics, Night 1 introduces the main 3 toy animatronics, being Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica alongside the puppet. The toys all function in the same way, albeit with slight differences. Bonnie and Chica will go for your vents, the size they approach from actually swapping from FNAF 1, with Chica on the left and Bonnie in the right. And when you see them, you gotta slam your mask down as fast as you possibly can, Bonnie physically coming out of the vent and sliding across the screen, staring through you as the lights flicker. Chica on the other hand was supposed to act the same way, with her looking at you through the mask, but Scott couldn't figure out how to make it work in the code for some reason. You can actually find incomplete code for it alongside her render for the scene in the game files, but if you actually try and finish it, the game crashes. Though to my knowledge, someone did actually figure out how to make it work. Unfortunately, she just slides on the right side of the screen instead of the left, but it's still a cool little add-on if you're into that kind of thing. As for Toy Freddy, the same thing as the other two, but instead of going through the vents, he comes in through the main hall in front of you. Once he's behind your desk and the lights start flickering though, just put on the mask. Simple. The mask mechanic is definitely interesting. The canonical reason for it working is the new animatronics have a facial recognition system built into them. You know, to prevent a certain from happening again. Which I suppose is a reasonable explanation until we take this into consideration. And then there's the puppet, who resides in the prize corner for the most part, with you having to hold down the music box button on the camera to wind it up and keep them from coming out of the box and killing you. Essentially being the only incentive in the game for being on the cameras. And with the fact that the box winding down speeds up every night, on later nights you don't even have time or a reason to check the other cameras. Which really sucks considering some of these camera shots are generally crazy. Keep this in mind for later though, I do have a solution. Night 2 introduces Withered Foxy, BB, and the Mangle, with Foxy acting as your main reason to check the corridor in front of you. To deal with him, you just gotta flash a light at him down the corridor every once in a while until he sods off. Fairly simple, but it does directly play off another character's mechanic. BB, otherwise known as Balloon Boy. BB functions pretty much identical to everyone else. Put on the mask when you see him in the vents, unless you're from leaving and all that. But what makes him different is that if he ends up in your office, he doesn't actually kill you, rather breaking your flashlight, preventing you from flashing Foxy. Basically, it's an automatic death from Foxy, which in my eyes is kinda lame how Balloon Boy only really works in tandem with Foxy's mechanic, but we'll talk about that in a minute. As for the Mangle, I can very easily summarize Yes's mechanic in 2 words. Wasted potential. For such a cool and unique character design, Mangle functions basically identical to everyone else with minimal changes. And if I'm gonna be completely honest, it's actually easier to deal with Mangle in comparison to the other characters. With you not even needing to check the right vent for Yes, as you'll hear Yes's static garble whenever Yes is in the vent. Despite everything, I will admit the visual of Yes at the top of the office whenever Yes gets in the office is very cool, and I have to admit it's very panic and dread inducing, giving off a very similar feeling to the FNAF 1 power outage with Freddy playing the Toreador March, I think. So yeah, I guess Yes isn't all bad. Then after Night 2, you get another dream minigame, this time with Bonnie and Chica glancing over to look at you slightly rather than just staring forward blankly, which is neat. Not much really happens besides that though. Then there's Night 2, which introduces the main 3 Withereds, and the Withereds essentially, god fucking damn it. They function damn near identical to everyone else, what a surprise. I understand why Scott made this choice, it's kinda hard to balance a game with over 10 threats to deal with, but why the hell do these guys get fooled by the mask while Foxy doesn't? I know the phone guy says they tried to retrofit the older models with the new tech, but it just feels like a stretch to explain a somewhat nonsensical mechanic for these guys in particular. If I'm gonna be honest, I feel like Fiznom's another FNAF fan game open source does the Withereds a whole lot more justice with a mechanic that makes more sense for these broken down robots. The way they work in that game is, they'll slowly progress towards you from the parts and service room, and where applicable, you hold your light on their eyes for a few seconds to send them back to where they came. Of course it's not exactly how I'd imagine it working in FNAF 2, 2, I would do it so the music box is slowed down rather than being completely abolished. And each wizard has about 3 or 4 cameras they need to go through before getting your vent or corridor and then your office. And instead of holding the light, you just gotta flash them a few times like Foxy in the corridor to make them go back to passing service. They'd be a lot less active and easier to deal with than Foxy though, for the sake of dealing with 3 threats like this in the camera system rather than just the one guy in your corridor. I also wouldn't mind the mask being used as like a last resort for the wizards if you're unable to deal with them in time, at the cost of them taking a lot longer to leave your office than the toy animatronics. Potentially adding a bit of strategy to the game, either focusing on them alongside the puppet, giving you less time to wind the music box by having less animatronics to deal with in your office, or ignoring them, making sure the box is wound up at the risk of one of these mofos coming into your office at an incredibly inconvenient time. I think this is a much better way of handling the wizards than just another mask mechanic. Still keeping it fairly simple mechanic-wise due to the fact there's 10 animatronics, while also giving you an excuse to check the other cameras rather than just staying on the prize corner all night. And after beating night 3, you get another in-between night cutscene, who would have thought? It's a direct continuation of the last cutscene, with Bonnie and Chica staring directly at you this time rather than just giving you a side-eye. And after a few moments of looking around, Yellow Bear eventually spawns in the center of the room. I don't really see a need to talk about nights 4 or 5 though, considering it's just a difficulty ramp for the existing animatronics. Well, besides the paycheck you get at the end of night 5, hey, this game's a prequel, the beginning of the end, am I right? Oh, and also the post-Nightfall cutscene with the puppet staring directly into my soul. Jesus Christ, this render is creepy as all hell! And finally there's night 6. This was hell, all thanks to my great buddy pal HV convincing me checking the vents is completely unnecessary. But after that, slight hiccup. It was still hell, almost all of my death post the light vent thing being caused by this stupid little bitch refusing to leave the vent. BB, you absolute cunt! Beyond the usual AI ramp up, Night 6 also introduces Yellow Bear, aptly renamed to Golden Freddy, all thanks to that one Markiplier video. I'll never forgive you. He appears in your office from time to time, just put on the mask or flip your camera up to make him leave. Basically the same as FNAF 1, except for when he's not. Yeah, he also occasionally appears at the end of the corridor in front of you as a massive floating head, really emphasizing the ghostly and paranormal side of him. Eventually I developed a strategy of putting on the mask the moment I leave the cameras and always expecting to be forced out of them by one of the office animatronics. The moment you see an animatronic in the vent, put the mask on, especially if it's BB. I would also recommend flashing Foxy beforehand, that's optional. And always flash the corridor a few times whenever Foxy's there, and after a few attempts, I was home free. Only to be greeted with an overtime paycheck and a newspaper clipping detailing the closure of the restaurant due to animatronic malfunctions. That's a weird way of saying bye to 87, but okay. Oh yeah, and also them scrapping the toy animatronics but keeping the older models in hopes of reorganizing the company at a later date, tying into the beginning of the franchise. And while we're here, I should probably bring up the rare Easter egg characters, starting with the most iconic, RWQ FSF AXSC. Yes, I have that memorized, shut up. They'll very rarely appear in the corner of your office when flipping your camera monitor down, the game crashing if you look at them for too long. Despite not getting the Easter egg myself, obviously, I can imagine how this could invoke a feeling in you similar to what you get encountering FNAF 1's Yellow Bear for the first time, although less effective due to having absolutely no build-up and them just spontaneously materializing in the corner of your office, in comparison to Yellow Bear's poster appearance in Giggle before. Oh god! What the f- I mean, it's hardly anything, but it's still better than nothing. Then there's my underappreciated GOAT, Shadow Freddy. He'll appear in the parts and service room from time to time when nobody's in there, sitting in the spot Bonnie's usually in before leaving the room. Yeah, there's not much else to really say about this guy besides the fact most players will never even get a chance to see him due to always having to deal with... Oh wait, there is one thing. There's a super common misconception about Shadow Freddy, which is that, contrary to popular belief, he doesn't actually crash the game when you look at him too long. I'm not exactly sure where this myth emerged from, but what I am certain about is that it definitely has something to do with RxQ. How are you the more popular Shadow animatronic? And then there's JJ, who just appears under your desk from time to time. She's very silly. For some reason, JJ kinda reminds me of Sparky, most likely having something to do with the fact she's hidden surprisingly well in plain sight, being something you could very easily miss if you're not looking for her. And finally there's Endo02. Oh god, it multiplied. Leave the music box unwound and there's a chance the mofo will appear in the prize corner before your death, eventually making their way into the left vent of your office, actually helping you out by straight up blocking any and all threats that can appear in that vent. And fun fact, in VR Help Wanted's version of FNAF 2, if you do end up encountering Endo02, he will actually leave the vent to chill in your office, which is neat. I'm not going to talk about the custom night. There is no way in hell I'm talking about 1020 mode. You can't make me. You can't make me! Before we move on to the atmosphere, I think it's only fair to dedicate a section to the secret minigames you can get after dying. Now, because I, kinda sorta sucked at this game, I ended up getting all of the minigames. multiple times. Yeah, laugh it up, laugh it up! I'll cover these in chronological order from a timeline perspective, starting off with Take Cake to the Children. You play as either Freddy or Fredbear, I'm not getting into that argument, delivering cakes to 6 children around the room as you can see a child crying out of the playable box, uninteractable. Eventually a purple car driving up to the child as the purple man steps out, the player getting slower every second as the child starts to cry even more. Their face becomes more and more grotesque until they turn grey, seemingly dead, before a puppet jump scare happens. This minigame showing how the child who possesses the puppet died, presumably being the purple man's first victim. Then there's Foxy Go Go Go, playing as Foxy, obviously, in presumably the FNAF 1 location. You wait in Pirate's Cove for a little bit until the top of the screen tells you to go go go, running to the left of the screen to see 5 children cheering for your arrival. You do it again, and again, but on the 3rd time, something's off. That purple man we encountered back in Take Cake to the Children, standing in the corner this time. And when we run left, 5 dead children are there to greet Foxy, really hammering home the point the first game instilled into us, ending it off with a Withered Foxy jump scare. I'd assume this minigame is more metaphorical than the seemingly literal interpretation of the last. I doubt the 5 missing kids were actually laying out in the middle of the dining area like that. Or are they? Give gifts, give life. Playing as the puppet, giving gifts to 4 corpses in each corner of the room, and after that doesn't do anything, we're instructed to give life to the dead children. Each corpse is given a head from one of the Freddy's mascots, but once we put the last head on the last child, for a singular frame, a 5th kid appears in the centre of the room before we're jump scared by Golden Freddy. Explaining how the puppet ties into the overarching lore, they were the one who gifted the children life within the animatronic mascot. Speaking of the puppet, save them! You play as Withered Freddy walking around the FNAF 2 establishment following the puppet, who tells you to save them. Duh. Presumably referring to these corpses scattered around the establishment. To me it looks like Mr. Afton got a little bit trigger happy. You're supposed to walk above the puppet box to end the minigame, but sometimes— Scott, what the fuck?! I understand why Scott gave Purple Guy 2 different sprites. I mean, imagine if you saw this thing sliding towards you and saved them rather than their normal sprite. But god damn it, Scott, it's not that hard to make their colours match! You made the community think there were 2 killers. As I say, the old FNAF community was absolutely wild. Aesthetically, I know I bomb on the FNAF minigames a lot for not having proper pixel art, but honestly, the Atari-like style used for the minigames do have a bit of charm to them, so even if it's not really pixel art in the same way that games like Shovel Knight or Deltarune do, I still really like them. Why is Withered Freddy the only one with shading? Starting off with the way the game looks, the visuals are very hit or miss to me. On one hand, the map makes no damn sense and neither do some of these camera angles. Parts and surfaces completely devoid of anything other than the withers, despite the fact it's supposed to be a repair room that for all intents and purposes should have shelves, equipment and animatronic parts lying around. And the mangle is a goddamn PNG overlay in most of their camera shots save for Kids Cove and the right vent. Like seriously, these are like parody Twitter edits without the lens flare and obnoxiously good lighting. You really couldn't have put mangle into that map physically and rendered it like all the other characters? But on the other hand, holy fuck, holy shit, some of these renders go insanely hard. I'll be putting my favourites on the screen up during editing. I like the withers a lot, can you tell? I think it's because they lean so incredibly hard into that uncanny vibe, them staring directly into the camera blankly, or better yet, Bonnie and Foxy staring down at the floor, their heads too heavy to stand upright on their own. I think it's an especially interesting detail that Foxy's eye is rolled back into his head in the parts and service camera, giving him this soulless feel, even if we know that's the exact opposite of what's going on here. As for sound design, I'd say it's actually not too bad besides— would you turn that off?! There's not much I really have to say about the sound design beyond the camera glitching sound being the same noise used as one of the animatronics is in your office. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but it was a really good choice on Scott's part, scaring me into instinctively flipping my camera down every time it happened. But there is one aspect of FNAF 1, a very important one I'd argue, that's lost in FNAF 2 and almost all subsequent games in the franchise. The offness to it all. FNAF is supposed to feel like a real-life creepypasta, a paranormal copy of a game haunted by an unknowable force, taunting the player for hallucinations that flash across the screen, changing posters and sometimes even coming directly face to face with the player as the Yellow Bear himself. The fact he crashes your game soon after jump scaring you, really hammering this home. It truly was lightning in a bottle, a perfect balance of deceptively simple gameplay and a properly paranormal, slightly off-feeling experience that Scott never achieved again. A balance that, unfortunately, FNAF 2 falls flat on in favour of its chaotic gameplay and its Easter egg characters. And while the Easter egg characters definitely do add to FNAF 2's chaotic gameplay that's designed to make you panic, in some cases making you think of it as a real threat you need to deal with in some way, it'd still be nice to have the FNAF 1 style hallucinations or changing poster here and there, you know? I should also talk about jump scares while I'm here, which much like the visuals are very hit or miss. Withered Foxy, Withered Chica and the Mangles being the absolute best of the best in my opinion. Foxy and Chica's feeling really sudden and aggressive, Chica's being particularly emphasized by her already creepy design. And while Mangle doesn't quite hit the mark in speed and suddenness, I'd still consider it to be incredibly good because of how unique it is. The way they actually descend down from the ceiling, the final frames being from the inside of Mangle's mouth, directly before they chomp down on your head. I also really like Golden Freddy's for the way their head just flies at you like that, although I think it'd be pretty cool if their jump scare replicated their FNAF 1 jump scare in some way. It's still pretty neat. As for everyone else, both of the Freddy jump scares just look goofy to me, I'm sorry. And the way Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica try to replicate the way Foxy jumps out at you, it's not even close. The puppet does come close though, but she doesn't quite hit the same way Withered Foxy's does. Withered Bonnie's is fine though. It's not goofy like the Freddy's, but it's not amazing like Chica or Foxy's is. It's just fine. Now on to character designs. One of the visual aspects of the game that surprisingly is fairly consistent in quality. Speaking of, we'll be starting with mediocrity. Toy Freddy is the only design in the game I'm actively not the biggest fan of. I'm sorry, Toy Freddy fans. I'm sure he could be scary under the right circumstances, but I just don't see it. It's a similar thing with Toy Bonnie, I think, though Toy Bonnie is a bit of a lesser offender, as he does kind of give off the uncanny vibe a little better. Also, their red screen is pretty creepy. There's also RWQFSFAXSC, who's Toy Bonnie but pitch black with glowing eyes and teeth. I mean, sure, they're not identical to Toy Bonnie, but they sure do exist. As for Toy Chica, she's definitely the strongest of the toys, being able to remove her beak to reveal her endoskeleton teeth underneath, which I will admit is pretty spooky. I also find it interesting how the cupcake is implied to be physically stuck to her hand due to the fact in every shot in the game she's holding it. There's also, fine, I'll talk about it! Scott. Buddy. Pal. What were you thinking with Toy Chica? Why is she so feminine? Why does she have panties? The panties make her feel more naked than the other animatronics who, may I remind you, are wearing literally nothing. And the fact that Scott actively leans into, that side of the Toy Chica fandom through her voice lines and UCN is just... There's a really good video by Demuted that goes in depth about why this is a massive issue beyond the obvious stuff, but beyond that, I'm done talking about her. Moving on from Toy Chica though, we then have the Mangle. God damn, this is amazing! Mangle is easily one of my favourite designs in the entirety of the FNAF franchise. I love them so much. The two heads, each on massively long necks composed of arm joints, all of the mismatched parts and exposed wires, the cute little tail, and the fact it can crawl on walls and ceilings. It all comes together to make this horrific abomination that just look at this thing. You know this thing could hurt you, and I absolutely love it. Even if Scott seems to hate it. I do forgive him though because of the vent repair minigame FNAF VR. And we're ending off the toys of BB and JJ. I don't know what it is about their designs, but they're not only annoying as hell, but they also look annoying as hell. Shifting away from the toy animatronics though, we then have Withered Freddy, certainly the best at capturing the FNAF 1 uncanny vibe in my eyes. I really like how he's constantly leaning down, and the fact he barely fits into frame in the office, reaching an arm out towards you, really gives off a sense of scale in comparison to the other Withereds, and it is terrifying. Moving on to Withered Bonnie, easily the most iconic of the Withereds. The missing face and arm with red LED lights for eyes, you just know this thing wants you dead. Giving off a very similar feeling of intimidation to Freddy in FNAF 1, I think. I also really like the detail of Bonnie often leaning to his right due to the weight imbalance, that's very neat. Withered Chica. Easily the most horrifying of the Withereds in my eyes, with most of my friends seeming to agree. The lack of eyebrows and sunken, perpetually wide eyes, the broken jaw hanging wide of her endo-jaw in full show, alongside her arms being stuck in that T-pose. She shows so much personality in all of her shots, but you're not able to discern any emotion from her. I think it's most obvious in this camera shot, head slightly askew from the camera, but very clearly intending to be seen. You know there's something behind those eyes, you know she's thinking, but she lacks any features to help you define what those thoughts or emotions might be. It is incredibly done. Withered Foxy, on the other hand, Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy, the puppet! Finally someone I have points for! I feel that Marionette plays into a different type of the uncanny valley none of the other animatronics do. With everyone else more prominently in FNAF 1, the main mascots play into the idea of something that's not supposed to be alive, well, being alive. The dead-eyed stares, sunken eyes, and lack of any particular emotion in their faces screaming they're not supposed to be moving. These things are supposed to be lifeless. But I believe the puppet plays into the more traditional side of it. Something that feels almost human, but just barely misses the mark, invoking a sense of confusion and anxiety within the human mind. The hyper-realistic eye sockets but lacking anything in them, the big toothless grin, and the general shape of the mask feeling very similar to that of a human face, but lacking any distinct human details. The body shape is also very interesting to me. Thin, smooth and lanky with no crevices or glimpses at the animatronic endoskeleton. A stark contrast to the other mascots who aren't afraid of showing part of their innards through the gaps in the suits where the joints are present. The puppet isn't supposed to feel like a robot. It's supposed to feel like something more aware, more intelligent than everyone else. The phone guy even says it himself on night 2.
I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking.
The marionette is genuinely one of my favourite designs in FNAF 2 when it comes to the horror, next to Withered Chica for the sole reason of it tries something completely different to the other animatronics, remixing the style of the uncanny that everyone else does and twisting it into something different. I would also like to mention Hoax characters here, since FNAF 2 is like the great expanse when it comes to Hoax characters. I also just don't know where else to put these guys. Starting off with my absolute favourite, Toy Golden Freddy. Although the way it's executed, leaves something to be desired, to say the least. In concept, it actually makes a lot of sense. There's a withered version of Golden Freddy, so why wouldn't there be a toy version? There's also a Toy Golden Bonnie, who I couldn't find much information on, and it's just generally kind of lame, so... Then there's the Grey Puppet Hoax, who I believe is what inspired Vinny's main design in the first Five Nights at Candy's game. They end up spelling Save Me before the puppet jump scares the player, their form changing into the Grey Puppet before the game over screen. I definitely like this one a lot more, because it does kind of feel like a rare occurrence you could actually encounter in the game, unlike... The purple guy animatronic, this hoax is honestly a very silly one to me. The very idea of the killer being an animatronic, or the killer wearing a suit that looks like that to lure the kids away, I can't take it seriously, I'm sorry. There's also all of these, which what's the point of these even existing again? The story is generally just an expansion of the plot presented in FNAF 1, you know, before it became completely and utterly incomprehensible. Please note though that I'm mostly just going to be talking about the lore presented in FNAF 1 and 2, as that's what the video's main focus is. At the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, outside of the restaurant, a child was murdered by the Purple Man who was driving by. I don't know why the Purple Man chose to stop and kill a child on his drive home, but okay. The soul of the child ends up possessing the puppet for reasons unknown at the time, and by the time the missing children's incident happened, the marionette took note of the lost souls of the children, helping their spirits into the animatronics in an attempt to help them get revenge on their killer. But the puppet seemed to miss a spirit, the child who possesses Yellow Bear, or Golden Freddy, I don't know. Once the original Freddy's location shuts down due to the animatronics leaking blood and mucus out of their eyes and joints, you know, regular healthcare violations, the location is left to rot for a good few years until Fazbear Entertainment returns to the old place, attempting to retrofit the old animatronics with this new facial recognition criminal database technology they've been working on for a little bit to prevent kids from dying again. Only to scrap the entire thing and make brand new animatronics, taking parts from the old ones to save costs. Now, things do get a little bit iffy beyond this point on whether or not the toy animatronics are possessed or not, with three main interpretations. There's option 1, aka the lame route. The toy animatronics aren't possessed and are just on the fritz due to William Afton discreetly tampering with the animatronics. Option 2, the toy animatronics are possessed by extensions of the original missing children due to the withered parts being used in making the toys. And finally there's option 3. The set of dead children we see scattered around the establishment and save them end up possessing the toy animatronics and then are promptly never seen, acknowledged, or used ever again. There's also the people who think Mangle is possessed by a dog. Anyway, the Purple Man is implied to briefly take the night shift position before Jeremy does in FNAF 2, who somehow ends up getting through 6 nights and by night 7 ends up on the day shift, promptly ending up getting a bite taken out of his skull by one of the animatronics, leading to the restaurant being shut down when only being a few weeks into operation. The company stating they plan on keeping the old models in hopes of starting afresh one day. Meanwhile in the night, Fritz Smith takes Jeremy's place, getting fired on his first night on the job for smelling like that awfully distinct stench emanating out of my basement for no apparent reason. Oh, and also tampering with the animatronics, I guess. Generally, the game is very chaotic and panic-inducing. The sheer aggression of the unsettling animatronics, alongside the overlooming threats of always trying to keep the music box bound up and keeping Foxy at bay. The game more than earns the title the sister location trailer gives it. Although the map is a bit rushed, I think it definitely has points in which it works incredibly well. And despite my gripes with it, I actually really like the game now. Wait, before the end. You may be wondering if I'm gonna make a review on the FNAF 2 movie. No, not yet at least. I actually plan on making a trilogy review when the third movie comes out, so look out for that in like 2028 or something.